Joe Pryor here, and welcome back. And in this next section, we're going to talk about the different types of real estate investments and their advantages. And hopefully this is kind of going to match up with kind of the parameters you've been thinking about, but we kind of want to go into detail. Maybe you haven't made up your mind yet. And so let's go into those different ones, and a little later we'll go into even more detail on those. Well, the first one is a long-term rental. This is where, something is going to be rented for a year or more, a year to 2 year on a lease. It's typically going to be a single family home or possibly a condo, a townhome. These are going to be the normal ways that we do this. And this is where, you're really looking at the appreciation potential, because single family homes in a lot of areas, in a lot of cities and states, are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of getting that appreciation over that 7 or 10 years or more that you're going to hold the property. Now, other markets may be more geared to condos. Maybe that's the hottest thing going. Maybe that is what, is the majority of houses or the majority of properties that you can get into that have the most appreciation. And so every market, and we'll get into different kind of markets here in a little bit, but every market's going to be a little bit different. We kind of do a combination of things where I am, but to a great extent, single family is the biggest part of what people are investing in, either long-term or short-term. So we'll get into that. So, you want to make sure that whatever you're investing in, it has the best appreciation potential you can do. The other thing that's really great about long-term rentals is tenant stability. So, if somebody's there for a year or 2 years now, they may have a high credit score, they may have moved to that city for a new job, and they kind of want to reconnoiter a little bit. They're not sure where they want to be, what the school systems are like. So they're going to rent for a year, maybe even 2 years, and then you have more dedicated renters. But, if you talk to a property manager, and that's the section we'll get into later, what is the average time? Is it 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years? But vacancy is going to be always an enemy. And we're going to get into that. So anytime you can eliminate vacancy, if we can get it down to like a 3%, this is what long-term rentals are all about, is having low vacancy rates. So steady income, money coming in, appreciation potential, tenant stability. But there's also short-term rentals. And as I've said, for disclosure, I own both, long-term and short-term. But the thing that I found with short-term rental is I have a much higher rental income. In other words, if you rent by the day, the week, the month, typically this is going to be higher than you have in that long-term rental. However, the other thing that you have to be aware of is that they're going to have more vacancy. So in terms of analyzing this, looking at, I'm getting more money, but I also have more vacancy. Again, it's a return on investment analysis. But if you're by the ocean, if you're in the mountains, for instance, a resort area, like Scottsdale or Phoenix with a lot of golf courses, this is a place where Airbnb is really hot. Or it could be a situation where, you're in a city, you're there for business, it's a normal city, and you don't want to stay in a hotel. You want to stay somewhere where you have a kitchen. Maybe you have a whole house, and maybe it's actually cheaper. Maybe you can rent for $100 a day, $150 a day. And, you're in a more comfortable situation, more room. You can have breakfast on your own at home and not have to go out, or you can make dinner at home when you get home from business. So there's a lot of things about short-term rentals that are really, really good. The two major companies involved in this, and we'll go into this a little bit later, Airbnb and VRBO, or Vrbo as they like to call themselves. So there's flexibility in the property usage, and we're also going to show a little bit later how you can buy a second home somewhere, use it as a second home, and also as a short-term rental. So there's some cool stuff you can do with short-term. But there's also seasonal demand opportunities. I know I like to hike, and I've stayed in Breckenridge and Vail, during August and September, because I like to hike the mountains. And also the prices are a whole lot cheaper, but boy, you make your money seasonally. If it's Florida, you make your money in December, January, February, March, because they're getting out of the cold and coming down. So you're going to evaluate all the things about buying a short-term rental. Don't want to steer you away from it. It's another good way to invest in real estate. Now, there's also fixing and flipping. And boy, oh boy, is this where you get the seminars, the webinars, and the info commercials. And I'm just going to say this up front. I've seen amateurs lose their shirt, lose everything, But I also have people that make a whole lot of money doing it. That may be ex-builders, ex-contractors, electricians, whatever, or people that have the time to put in sweat equity. But fixing and flipping is a situation that, you need to find the right market for it. And also very often it's a distressed property. It's something that, it's gone into foreclosure and you can buy it, or maybe at a tax sale. It also can be an estate sale. I know people in my area, man, they're estate sale mavens because they know they're going to want to sell the house. They want to get there first and make their offer. The thing about fixing and flipping, unlike short-term and long-term rentals, where you can hold it for 7-10 years or more and wait for your money down the road, this is different. You're going to have to make your money up front, and there's a lot more risk involved with fixing and flipping, and we'll get into that. So you need to pay less than anybody does. So it's, first of all, owner-occupants paying the most, long-term or short-term investment property next, fix and flip at the lowest, because the risks are greater of how much it's going to cost. A lot of times they're not even going to allow inspections, and so you're buying it as is. And at the same time, the interest rate clock is ticking and taking your money down to a lower level. And so you need to make sure that you get this thing in a bargain basement price. It's a little harder to do, but if you're willing to do it, it can be profitable for you. You need a crew of subcontractors. Trust me, you don't want to buy out of state, find a general contractor. So you're going to get a 15% markup from the general contractor, another 15% markup from the subcontractor. You're not going to know these people. And basically, they're going to make some good money off of you. So very often, it's going to be local for you to do this. In other words, it's in your own individual area. And then financing isn't easy, and we're going to get into this a little bit later. It's not the easiest thing to do. Well, we're going to talk about FHA, VA, Fannie Mae. This is not the way you've got to go, and we're going to go into that. And you won't make money every time. Even the best flippers that I know of, who are ex-builders. I can remember one in my neighborhood, and he bought it, and the inspection didn't come up with a serious water leak in the slab. A lot of the slab had to be torn up, had to be redone, plumbing and electrical had to be redone. He ended up losing about $20,000 on the house. But somebody that makes $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. So he has the ability to lose money. Understand this, if it's something you want to get into and devote a lot of time to, and it's an active investment, then you got to realize that sometimes it's not going to work out right. Finally, there's real estate investment trust. This is where you put money in a fund. It's a stock, essentially. It's a pool of money. It's publicly traded. It has liquidity. You can buy it. You can sell it. It's a diversified portfolio. It has capital appreciation potential like any stock. It's a lower cost of entry. And so you want to invest $5,000 in a REIT. That's something you can do that you can't do in a short-term, long-term, or fix and flip situation. These are the type of REITs over here you can invest in. Equity REITs, mortgage REITs, hybridized REITs that have different kinds of things in there. Retail properties, residential properties, offices, healthcare, hotel and hospitality, infrastructure. Consult with someone that helps you invest in stocks and mutual funds, things of that nature. They can educate you on REITs. It's a way of getting in and making some money in real estate, but without making the big money that maybe comes on a little bit later, the amount of money that you have to do to invest in a real estate home. So I think we got a little bit of time here to kind of go on a little bit further. And I want to talk about active and passive investments in real estate. Now, I've kind of previewed that and what you just heard. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So we talked about short-term rentals. And those are some examples over there. I mean, I've seen tree houses. I've seen everything under the sun. There's some cool stuff out there. Converted buses, converted planes, normal single-family homes, condos. It's pretty cool. But Airbnb and vacation rentals by owner, which, by the way, is set up with Expedia when you go on Expedia, are the top companies that are out there. There are other people that are out there. But you go to these websites and you go, I want to stay there. This is what I want. And, you go from homes to boats to castles, playrooms, everything is a short-term rental that's out there. In fact, I've gone to cities and there's a site called Turo, which is like an Airbnb for cars. So short-term rentals are going all over the map here, and it's something you need to work with. And it's worldwide. Now, some of it's restricted. There's some countries right now and some large cities overseas that aren't doing it, but you'll be amazed at how many Airbnbs there are out there. You need to be a little bit more careful because you hear the horror stories, but you get, somebody that's highly rated with a lot of reviews, you can use this. So it may be in a situation, you may have a lot of money and you want to invest in Costa Rica and you want a short-term rental in Costa Rica because when it's unoccupied, you want to go down there for a week to 2 weeks and use it. These are ways that you can get into short-term rentals, but they are very, very active. You got to have subcontractors, you got to have cleaning crews. But if you go through Airbnb and VRBO, they handle the money, they do a lot of things for you. There's some liability insurance involved in that. And so it's ways that it's still more active than others, but it's something that you need to look into. And again, you can start as a second home. I've done it this way. I bought, properties that are second homes for me. My wife and I have done this. And, we've lived in there for 1 year, which is basically what you have to do to get the owner-occupant financing because you get better rates. You can still go back and forth and use it as a rental when you're not there, but at some point you buy another and you use that as a full rental property. So again, that's the way that you do it. You need a crew. I promise you, get into Airbnb and VRBO, the most important person you're going to have is the cleaning crew. Where you get the best reviews is where you have a great cleaning crew, where it's pristine when people come in. It's number one. You need all these people involved, so it's much more active. Now, passive is what I've talked about before, where you want to spend more time on everything else. You'd rather have an investment where it's being taken care of. This is when you go to turnkey solutions in cities. This is where you have it all the way down to the property manager handling everything. And you don't get hardly any calls at all unless it's a major problem or an eviction. And so these are kind of things that you may be saying, I don't have the time for this. But maybe you're in a husband-wife relationship and maybe one of you has a little extra time. Maybe one person works part-time and they can handle the short-term rentals or the more active stuff that's out there, or even the fix and flip. My wife and I have both done fix and flipping before we got married, and we haven't done it since, but we've both been involved in doing that and doing it on a major scale. So, the thing is passive investing is buying those homes where you're focused on long-term leases. You're talking about 1 year or more. You're willing to go 10 years down the road. And those are the long-term rentals with property managers and real estate investment trusts. That can be long-term if they're working for you. You may hold it for 10 years if it's a good one. So I'm going to stop right there. And in the next section going on, I want to talk about the balancing act, okay? For those of you out there, all right, that want to have multiple types of properties, how do we balance this out and how do we make it work? Now, you've seen hints of that before this. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail and really go further into this class. So thank you for being here. Stay tuned. Next module is coming up.